Hello, everyone. Another episode of CTO Corner, and we had such a great episode before, so we decided to invite you again. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Very good, very good. And Neil, how are you?
Hi, guys. Thank you again, Greg. It was a great episode, the last one, and me and Andrea thought to have a continued episode for that. I believe this conversation is really, it's really in the main problem for decision makers today about the cloud, right approach to adopt cloud and how to do so. So I believe totally that the last episode was great, with a great value for our listeners, and let's see what we got today.
Yeah, so we talk about cloud, the strategy, cloud adoption, hybrid cloud, and now we move to the next step. So we want to know how do you know that you are making the right decision about selecting a vendor? What are the pitfalls? What do you need to watch out from? And and like we said, Greg, you are working with a lot of companies, so we will really want to listen about these topics from you.
Well, thank you. So these are great topics and great questions. We have a huge customer base. We've helped companies from a small hedge fund all the way up to large enterprise customers all over the world. And each customer is treated pretty much the same. And it's funny how their problems all translate across, right? Mm-hmm. So whether you're small or big, the challenges that exist are typically the same. And everybody knows their backyard, right? When you leave your house and you want to go to the department store, you want to go to the supermarket, you know where to go, right? You walk down the street and you make a left, you make a right, and then you're there. But when you leave your neighborhood and you find yourself in a different neighborhood or a different state or a different country or a different continent, things may not feel like you're at home. And this translates out to expanding your businesses, right? So if you are looking for infrastructure in a different neighborhood, in a different state, in a different country, a different continent, how do you navigate those waters, right? How do you identify vendors that not only fit what you're looking to achieve, but are scalable and reputable, and you won't find yourself backed into a corner, with a commitment of a year, 2 years, or 3 years that you don't want to be in.
Yeah, when I was advising at the Minister of Finance in Israel, sometimes I didn't know why they are choosing the three big ones in Israel. And I was a kid. I didn't know, understand really a business, why you go to the big ones or there's only two when you have, a lot of companies. And then when you grow up and you take all the aspects of getting really a decision, it's really, you really understand how do you need to choose really a vendor that helps you and not just give you, small things, and someone that you can trust and something that you can go along the way. So if you look at the main challenges, maybe that an IT director, is looking today, is facing today, what can you tell us about that, Greg?
Yeah, Greg, I will add to a real question. It's really amazing. The COVID-19 epidemics just accelerated all the IT challenges and IT transformations from digital aspects and data the aspects for organization today. And it's accelerating 5 years program, perhaps organization still doing today, to a quarter. So basically, they need to adopt a lot of new technologies because COVID-19 and social distancing, etc., in a very short time. And how to do so, they need to adopt new technology. Then they see really the main challenges for that. So if I take a real question and trying to to pack it right, what do you see the main challenges today for the IT directors in the companies you are advising, of course?
So it's a great question. We're going to talk both about present day, meaning COVID, and we're going to talk about a normal day, right? So, most IT directors are faced with the challenge of how do I balance my time between being a procurement director and a technology director, right? If I'm in the process of supporting and building my technology for my company, and I have to stop and spend, 20, 30 hours a week sourcing vendors, how do I balance my time? And I think this is a really good point. When you go and you look for vendors in different countries, you could spend hours just on Google, right? You can go out and spend hours on Google just identifying a vendor in a market. Now, once you have this list, you say to yourself, well, what do I do? Do I go onto their LinkedIn? Do I go and go to their website and submit a request form, hoping that an inside salesperson will email you back in a very defined and prompt manner? Once you've received contact from 12 of these companies, where do I start? Like, what questions do I ask? How do I manage the inflow of data? How do I know that we're comparing apples to apples? I mean, it's not an easy task, right? So what we've done for lots of organizations, big and small, is we've helped kind of take the fat off the steak and identify the 2 or 3 vendors in a given market that is a perfect fit for the types of services, infrastructure services that companies are looking for. And this saves hours and hours and hours of administrative time. And it saves lots of questioning as to whether or not you're making the right buying decision. I have a great story. It's a customer now. At the time, they weren't a customer. They'd come to us and basically said, listen, we made a royal mistake and we could really use your help getting out of it. And I said, well, what happened? He goes, well, we were looking for a data center in mainland China. It's a market we had never entered. And what did I do? I went on Google, found a half a dozen data centers, used a web portal and LinkedIn to find a contact. After several weeks, I finally had contact with the right people within these organizations. After a couple more weeks, we got proposals. We narrowed it to 2 people. And ultimately, we ended up going with the cheaper of the 2. The royal mistake was not realizing how expensive connectivity was in the market and not realizing that the vendor we went with, while cheaper, didn't have access to the providers that we wanted. So we ended up going in and spending almost 40% more on the total solution, again, because of our lack of experience within that market. So I was able to go in and help them reorganize contracts, get out of early term fees, and put them with the right vendors. So this is a good example of how you could stop, look at a market, work with a firm that has experience, has data to help make sure you're going down the right path.
So that's a great example. Greg, we're talking about worldwide challenges. I'm working also with Asia and United States, and even it's not just a contract. I will just add about what you just exampled. It's not just a contract; it's also the culture. So the differentiation of the culture between the states happen mainly changing the service offered. So you need to understand that, because if you know how services are looking in the United States or in Israel, they are not the same in Europe and they are not the same in Asia. There is not really a global standard on how technology, for example, you took, on the example you used, there is no global standard on how data centers should be offered. So that's the fundamental part that people need to understand. The differentiation between countries is also by contract, but also by culture. So it's not that the contract; it's also the culture that changing mainly the service being offered. So it's and you need to understand. And yeah, I totally agree with you. You cannot close a data center contract in China without understand the market you are going to use. It's different from different aspects. Really interesting, Greg. That's a great example on what not to do if you're not experienced in this industry, in this area. Use CloudAdvise, for example, or different providers to help you to be focused on the area, on the country, on the service provider, on the vendor, and how to get the best contract for you. If that's
people also don't realize how important language is, right? When you enter a market where they may not speak English, maybe they don't speak Hebrew, it just makes that project that much more difficult, right? So we've spent decades building relationships at all the top infrastructure carriers and vendors all over the world. We've helped dozens of customers in country, believe it or not, in Israel. We work with big, small, medium companies. We actually ended up putting a team on the street in Israel because our business has expanded so much within that country. There's so much innovation coming out of Israel right now, and once they reach a certain threshold, it's time to leave, right? It's time to go from Israel now to the US, go from Israel to EMEA, go from Israel to APAC. And it's nice to have someone hold your hand when you do this, right? Because you're going to A, pick the right vendors, B, spend the right money, and C, have a trusted partner to make sure that you're protected.
I guess that's the most important part when selecting a vendor for in a multinational or in a global world. So yes, you need, as for example, if you don't know how to fix your plumps at home, you will call the right person for that. So yes, when
exactly.
Going from national to multinational companies, you need to consult with the people that understand the country you're going to be located over there or use the service over there. I'm totally agree with you. For example, I heard about Apple and Foxconn. Also, there is a law firm in China that's the only thing they're doing. Is to bridge a gap between all this legal stuff. Because yes, you need to be specialist in the law or in the economical or the standards or the language or the culture in the country going to close the contract in. That's a great example. That's elaborating to the next question. So how can I be sure that I'm selecting the right vendor, or should I call it, God help us, a partner?
So obviously you can always use CloudAdvise, but if you don't have that luxury, I think the best approach is to LinkedIn is a big resource, right? I mean, instead of just starting on Google, if you go on LinkedIn, you could probably get a gauge for how big a company is based on the number of employees. There's also plenty of resources. Some are free, some cost subscriptions like Gartner, CB Insights. Again, these are ways you can go. However, technology is so specific these days. It's not so cut and dry. Years ago, someone could say, okay, I need connectivity, or I need a data center. It's not like that anymore, right? Now I need a data center, and that data center needs to have certain levels of compliance. And on top of that, they need an on-ramp to the AWS. And on top of that, there has to be a certain level of latency back to my office or my customers. So it's very specific, and large data type companies like Gartner can't provide that level of data. They'll give you kind of very generalized, very ubiquitous information. So I'm going to suggest hiring somebody, if it's a big deployment or even a small deployment, hire a consultant, bring on a free resource like CloudAdvise to help you navigate those waters. Again, we've done it for many, many reputable companies all over the world, and we have a lot of great data to share, and just to keep the technology progress happening.
So I definitely agree with about the example of Gartner, IDC for Forrester, and more. There is also a free crowdsource that's called G2 that also has a great example and reviews, but I really I laughed inside when you talked about the tailor-made problem. Yeah, so today nobody looks for one animal with 4 legs that looks black and white and says, oh, that's a cow. No, yeah, everybody looks a little bit different, and looking for the right animal for them, and looking for the right tailor-made software that have the right technical specifications and support and the right metrics for that. And yes, it's run into a problem because you cannot really have a public website to really compare products. Even if you see two products that are in the same industry or same category in the online consulting groups, perhaps that's not really suitable compared for your requirement. So you need to more specific to understand your requirements and try to rank the vendors by your requirements page and not by the Gartner or IDC or Forrester, etc. or McKinsey comparison between the products, because they think about one alignment and one standard, and you have your specific requirement, and you need to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. That's the main tip or advice I can give to my listeners. Make sure you're comparing the apples to apples by your requirements and not by Gartner, IDC, or Forrester, for example, definition on what is the category of software you are looking for.
That's a really good point. It's an excellent point. You know, we saw a recent example of a mid-size, about a 700-person, small 700-person non-for-profit company went out and
in Israel, 700 people. It's a mid-size. So yes.
All right. So and this is where I kind of back up to and from, because I realize that the U.S. standards from a company size is a little bit different, but you know, they spent a ton of money with Gartner, and this is a non-for-profit, right? So you would think that, you know, they would be more conservative, but I understand why they did it. They want to make sure they're making the right buying decisions, and what they were looking for here was a data center provider. Pretty cut and dry data center provider in the United States. Not sure why they wanted to use Gartner, since it was pretty cut and dry, but they did. And, you know, Gartner came back with 4 data center companies that they wanted to have them consider. They brought those 4 data centers to me and basically said, Greg, whoever you decide to bring to us, these are 4 data centers that need to be included. And one wasn't obvious, it's Equinix. I mean, everybody wants to be in Equinix. It's a great company. The other 3 were all no bids. So I included them. I knew out of the gate that these 3 weren't a fit because of their specific requirement. And they all came back as a no bid. And they say, well, why did they no bid this? You know, Gartner told us all this great stuff. Why did they no bid it? Well, because there's certain things that you're asking that they can't provide. And again, offering very generalized information isn't going to get you there. And, you know, one last thing to consider is nobody's going to give you a bad reference. When have you ever, you know, when you're applying for a job, you know, are you going to give a bad reference? No. So throw them out the door. References are useless unless you want to know how someone else's experience has been as it relates to you, right? But don't take that to the bank.
Really interesting. I was just listening to you, and really good points.
Yeah, it's really interesting, you know, Greg, because basically you're absolutely right. Nobody gives a bad reference, and again, the good reference you got, and I will elaborate about it. Perhaps that's not for your project, because he did a great project in specific requirement that is different from you. So that's not a relevant reference for you.
Yeah.
So yes, again, be sure you're comparing apple to apples. If you don't know how to do so, get the right advisor, right consulting group to assist you to make sure you're really comparing apples to apples again, and then they will assist you to choose the right vendor fits your requirements. I guess that's
it saves you time. It saves you time and money.
Yeah, and you know, if you take it Israel, I'm talking now about the Israeli market. If you look back at 3 or 4 years, it was really easy to choose. You know, you had 3 storage vendors, 4, you know, and also the servers the same. So to the C-levels, it was really easy to make the decision. You know, and if you were mistake, it was not too bad, you know, like everybody say, if you choose IBM security, it's not, you know, you were never fired for that. But I think that now that, you know, the IT world is really changing faster and frequently with the cloud, or not just with the cloud, really there is the need, and I think that is a mentality that needs to be changed here in Israel to, you know, to take an advisor to think better and to choose right. I think that this is the point that I take from this.
I will try to more to focus it, and I guess you're absolutely right. If you look 4 years ago, we were focusing more on the infrastructure part from the IT director's aspect, of course. And today, part of the evolution and the transformation that the technology industry itself are moving, even the IT directors themselves say, okay, we want to let go. Even we were going to use on-prem, we want to consume services on-premise. We want to see how to remove the infrastructure responsibility to get 24/7 service with a great availability, great scalability, and will everything work? Because again, digital transformation require really elasticity of the services themselves. So yes, I guess you know what Greg is saying today is because people are rushing and running like an animal, just following them and say, okay, we need to consume cloud. And now, cloud is not a bad word. Cloud is okay. Cloud is great, and also vendors are great, But you need to do that right because it's coming to be more complicated because the transition to services, the transition that made it more specific requirement for each company. How are you doing this? How are you bridging the gap? How you understand to select the right partner or vendor? So I guess, Greg, you have exciting work, and it sounds like you're meeting all the execution levels. The execution levels in the companies and in a point they're saying we want to choose the company but don't know how. So it's really exciting point to meet C-levels in organizations.
So any last words, maybe Greg, from you to the Israeli market?
You have such a beautiful country and such a growing market. It's the innovation that comes out, not just in tech, but in security, is just amazing. And it's been a wonderful decade of my time helping some of your local companies grow, right, and evolve from, 2 or 3 data, cabinets in a data center in New York to hundreds of cabinets all over the world, right? And it's been pretty amazing. And I look forward to continuing to do it. And having now a CloudAdvise team on the street in Israel is pretty amazing as well. It shows that we're really looking to invest in the market and have some connection.
Yeah, I think that you're a little modest. You talk to us about the companies that you are helping here in Israel, and they're really great and exciting companies. So if people want to reach you, Greg, how can they do it? We talked about the last episode, but let's go again.
So I think the easiest way to contact us is cloudadvise.net, or just email us at info@cloudadvise.net. From here, we'll direct you to, you can reference it to me, Greg Moss, and we'll make sure you get in front of the right people, whether it's someone in your local market or someone in a different market.
Okay. So thank you, Niv, and thank you.
Greg, thank you. It was exciting, and I
thank you, guys.
You have a great job. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.